The Galactic Council chamber hummed with restrained hostility. Commander Ethan Drake stood at the central podium, his shoulders squared under the weight of humanity's dwindling hope. Before him loomed a semicircle of alien delegates, each radiating a quiet disdain for the newcomer species on the galactic stage. The treaty, Earth's last attempt at peace, lay in ruins on the floor, its once pristine vellum now trampled under scaled, clawed, and gelatinous feet. "You dare accuse the Empire?" snarled High Chancellor Ivrix, her voice a low growl that echoed through the chamber. Her reptilian features twisted in contempt as she glared at Drake. "Humans, with your fragile worlds and naive ideals, have no place questioning galactic order." Drake's hands curled into fists behind his back. "An entire Earth colony was annihilated," he said, his voice steady but taut. "Families, children, all wiped out. And your order says nothing of justice?" The chamber erupted into a cacophony of murmurs, disdain rippling through the assembly. Drake scanned the faces of the alien delegates, searching for even a flicker of sympathy. None met his gaze, none but one. Ambassador Vorix, a thin, gaunt alien whose translucent skin pulsed faintly with light, inclined his head ever so slightly. It wasn't approval, but it was acknowledgement. Drake clung to that sliver of hope. Ivrix leaned forward, her forked tongue flicking as she spoke. "Justice is for equals, Commander. And your species is not." The gavel slammed down, silencing further debate. The council dismissed Drake with a wave of collective indifference. As he turned to leave, Vorix's voice, soft and resonant, reached his ears. "Commander," he murmured, his glowing eyes narrowing. "The Empire does not forget. But neither should you." The Orion's shield vibrated gently as it entered Earth's orbit, the battered frigate a testament to humanity's struggle for survival. Drake leaned against the observation deck, watching his planet slowly spin into view. The familiar blue and green hues brought him no comfort. Earth was beautiful, yes, but also painfully vulnerable. Dr. Lila Arkin's arrival broke his reverie. The scientist strode in with purpose, her lab coat fluttering behind her. Her dark eyes gleamed with urgency, offset by the lines of exhaustion etched across her face. "You're late," she said, brushing past him to pull up a holographic map of Earth's colonies. "The Council's rejection wasn't unexpected. We need to act now." Drake exhaled sharply. "And do what, Lila? Throw pebbles at the Empire's warships?" She turned, her expression fierce. "No, Ethan. We build something bigger. Something they won't see coming." She tapped the map, zooming in on a mineral-rich asteroid field deep in enemy territory. "We'll harness the mineral there to complete the Omega Core. It's the only weapon powerful enough to give us a fighting chance." "The Omega Core," Drake repeated, his tone wary. "The same weapon that could destabilize half a solar system?" "Half measures won't save us," she replied. "They've made it clear, coexistence isn't an option. It's us or them." Drake's jaw tightened. He hated the cold pragmatism in her voice but knew she was right. They had no choice. "And the asteroid field? Heavily guarded, I assume." She nodded. "Empire patrols hostile wildlife. It's a suicide mission. But if anyone can pull it off, it's you." The war room buzzed with heated arguments as Earth's remaining leaders debated their next move. The holographic display in the center of the chamber flickered, casting ghostly shadows over the tired faces of generals, scientists, and diplomats. General Marcus Voss, his grizzled features a roadmap of past battles, slammed his fist on the table. "We can't afford to gamble on untested technology. Our forces are barely holding the line as it is. And how long can they hold?" Lila countered, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "Every day we delay, more colonies fall. The Omega Core is our only shot at turning the tide." "It's a risk," Voss said, his voice lowering. "That could cost us everything." Drake stepped forward, his voice commanding silence. "And doing nothing guarantees we lose everything." He met each pair of eyes in turn. "I've seen what the Empire does to those who resist. They don't just conquer, they erase. If we don't act, there won't be an Earth left to save." The room fell silent. Finally, Voss sighed and gave a reluctant nod. "What's the plan, Commander?" Drake gestured to the map. "We take a stealth team to the asteroid field, extract the mineral, and bring it back. The fleet will buy us time by engaging the Empire near Mars. It's dangerous, but it's the only way." Later, aboard the Orion Shield, Drake and Lila prepared for departure. The ship's engines roared to life, vibrating through the deck plates as the crew finalized their checks. "Why do you do it?" Lila asked suddenly, breaking the tense silence. Drake glanced at her. "Do what?" "Keep fighting. After everything, the losses, the betrayals. Why keep going?" He hesitated, his gaze distant. "Because if I don't, who will?" He turned to face her fully. "Earth isn't perfect, Lila. But it's ours. And I'll be damned if I let them take it from us." Her expression softened for a brief moment before hardening again. "Just don't let your hero complex get us killed, Commander." "Wouldn't dream of it," he said, a faint smirk breaking through the tension. As the Orion shield broke free of Earth's gravity, alarms blared across the bridge. A patrol of Empire's ships loomed ahead, their sleek forms cutting through the void like predatory shadows. "Contact in 3 minutes!" the navigator shouted. Drake's eyes narrowed. "Ready the stealth systems," he ordered. "Let's see if we can slip past the hunters." Lila gripped the console, her voice low. "And if we can't?" Drake's smirk returned, tinged with defiance. "Then we make them regret hunting us." The Orion's shield drifted through the asteroid field, its engines humming at the lowest frequencies to avoid detection. Jagged rocks tumbled silently around them, some the size of mountains, others barely larger than pebbles. In the distance, the ominous glow of Empire patrol ships flickered through the darkness, their sleek silhouettes like wolves stalking prey. "Stealth systems holding at 90%. Ensign Kira Hart reported from her console, her voice tight with focus. "But those scanners will pick us up if we drift too close." Commander Ethan Drake stood behind her, his gaze fixed on the tactical display. "Plot a course through the debris. Keep us moving but don't attract attention." Dr. Lila Arkin paced in the cramped control room, her fingers tapping rhythmically against her data tablet. "We're running out of time. That mineral deposit won't wait for us to grow a spine." Drake shot her a sharp look. "And if we rush in, we'll be vaporized before we even touch the surface." "Patience, Lila." Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she said nothing. The tension between them hung heavy in the air, underscored by the faint rumble of the ship's engines. Minutes later, the uneasy calm shattered. A piercing alarm sliced through the control room. "Empire Patrol, closing fast!" Kira's voice trembled as red icons flared on the display. "Damn it!" Drake muttered, his mind racing. "They've spotted us." "Kira, evasive maneuvers." "Lila, strap in." The Orion's shield lurched violently as Kira dove the ship into the thickest part of the asteroid field. Massive rocks hurtled past, some close enough to scrape the shields. Empire fighters followed in relentless pursuit, their energy beams carving through the void. "Shields at 70%! A technician shouted. Drake gritted his teeth. "Bring the rear cannons online. Give them something to think about." The ship's turrets roared to life, spitting bursts of plasma that lit up the darkness. One of the fighters spiraled out of control, smashing into a nearby asteroid. But the others tightened their formation, their movements calculated and precise. In the chaos, Arkin's voice cut through. "Ethan, we can't outrun them forever. Use the debris." Drake's eyes flicked to the display, his mind snapping to an idea. "Kira, find us a big asteroid, something unstable." "On it," she replied, her hands flying over the controls. Moments later, the ship veered toward a massive chunk of rock, fissures glowing faintly from internal heat. As they passed beneath it, Drake gave the order. "Fire on the asteroid. Now!" The rear cannons unleashed a barrage, shattering the rock into an explosive cloud of debris. The pursuing fighters were caught in the blast, their shields overwhelmed by the onslaught. When the dust settled, only silence remained. "Enemy ships neutralized," Kira reported, her voice tinged with relief. Drake exhaled, tension draining from his shoulders. Good work, everyone. Let's move before reinforcements show up. The planet Caraxus loomed ahead, a harsh, barren world of jagged crimson cliffs and swirling acidic storms. The Orion shield touched down in a shallow canyon, its landing gear sinking slightly into the ashen soil. Drake stepped onto the surface, the acrid air biting through his helmet's filtration system. Around him, the landing party assembled, a mix of seasoned soldiers and engineers, their faces grim behind their visors. Arkin joined him, her equipment bag slung over one shoulder. We need to move fast, she said, her voice crackling over the comms. The mineral deposits are deep in Empire territory, and this storm won't make things easier. Drake nodded. Stay close. We don't know what's out there. As they moved through the canyon, the howling wind carried eerie echoes that set everyone on edge. The ground beneath their boots felt unstable, shifting slightly with each step. The tension was palpable, every shadow a potential threat. They hadn't gone far when movement flickered in the distance. Shapes emerged from the shadows, tall, spindly figures with glowing eyes and crude weapons fashioned from scavenged tech. Hold your fire, Drake ordered, raising a hand to stop his team. They're not Empire. The figures approached cautiously, their leader stepping forward. He was a towering alien with rough, scaled skin and a scar that ran from his temple to his jaw. His voice was guttural, but the translator in Drake's helmet rendered it intelligible. You dare trespass on Caraxus? The alien growled. This is rebel territory. Drake lowered his weapon, keeping his posture non-threatening. We're not Empire. We're here for the mineral deposits. We can help each other. The alien snorted. Help? Humans? You're more likely to stab us in the back. Arkin stepped forward, her voice sharp. We're fighting the same enemy. You need us as much as we need you. The alien's gaze shifted to her, his expression unreadable. After a tense moment, he barked an order to his followers, who lowered their weapons. Fine, he said. But betray us, and you'll wish the Empire got to you first. I am Trask, leader of the Caraxus rebels. Follow me. As the group ventured deeper into the canyon, Trask revealed the extent of the Empire's control. Massive drilling rigs loomed on the horizon, surrounded by heavily armed guards and automated turrets. The hum of machinery filled the air, blending with the storm's howls. The Empire bleeds this planet dry, Trask said, bitterness lacing his voice. They don't care who suffers, so long as they get what they want. Drake surveyed the site, his mind already forming a plan. We'll need to disable their defenses and move fast. Lila, can you rig the explosives? She nodded, her expression grim. If we can get close enough, I can make it happen. Trask grunted. You'd better. Their patrols are relentless, and failure means death for all of us. As night fell, the group crept closer to the Empire's mining site. The storm intensified, lightning flashing across the sky, casting jagged shadows over the barren landscape. Just as they reached the perimeter, a piercing alarm shattered the air. They've spotted us! Someone shouted. Drake drew his weapon, his voice steady despite the chaos. Hold the line! We finish what we came here for. The storm howled like a feral beast, battering the group as they huddled behind jagged rocks on the edge of the Empire's mining facility. Flashes of lightning illuminated the chaos, a vast industrial operation crawling with armed guards and towering, spider-like drones that patrolled the perimeter with eerie precision. Commander Ethan Drake knelt beside Dr. Lila Arkin, his voice low but commanding. The longer we sit here, the more time they have to call for reinforcements. Can you disable their scanners? Lila nodded, her face grim beneath her helmet's visor. I can patch into their network from that console, she said, pointing to a small terminal jutting from the base of a turret. But I'll need cover. And it won't be quiet. Drake turned to Trask, the rebel leader, whose piercing eyes seemed to glow in the dim light. We'll create a diversion. Your people flank left and take out the drones. My team will handle the guards. Trask bared his teeth in what might have been a grin, or a grimace. Try not to die, human. I'd hate to waste this alliance. Drake gave him a curt nod. The feeling's mutual. As the teams moved into position, the first shot rang out. A well-placed sniper round from Trask's group took down a drone, its legs crumpling beneath it. The guards snapped to attention, shouting orders and rushing toward the disturbance. Drake's team seized the opportunity. Go, go, go! He barked, leading his soldiers across the open ground. Plasma bolts zipped through the air, sizzling as they struck the earth around them. The harsh tang of burnt ozone filled Drake's nostrils. Lila darted toward the console, her hands flying over the interface as sparks erupted around her. This system's more secure than I thought, she muttered. I need more time. Time isn't on our side, Drake shouted, firing at a guard who had rounded the corner. The man crumpled, his weapon clattering to the ground. Above them, Trask's rebels engaged in a brutal skirmish with the remaining drones. One of the machines pinned a rebel beneath its spindly legs, only to be destroyed moments later by a grenade that left the air thick with smoke and debris. We're running out of cover! Kira Hart, the ship's navigator, called out from behind a boulder. Her voice trembled, but her aim remained steady as she took down another guard. Drake glanced at Lila. Status? Almost there, she hissed, sweat beading on her forehead despite the cold. Just keep them off me. As the firefight raged on, a new sound cut through the storm, the low, menacing hum of a dropship descending from the clouds. Its searchlights pierced the gloom, illuminating the battlefield with harsh, white beams. They've called reinforcements, Kira shouted, panic edging her voice. Drake's jaw clenched. We need to finish this now. Lila? Got it! She cried triumphantly as the terminal beeped. The facility's automated defenses flickered, then went dark. Their scanners are down. We're clear to move. Good, Drake said, grabbing her arm and pulling her away from the terminal as a barrage of gunfire rained down on their position. Fall back to the ridge! Trask, cover us! The rebel leader growled something in his native tongue and unleashed a volley of plasma bolts, forcing the advancing guards to take cover. Go, humans! He roared. I will hold them here. Drake hesitated for a heartbeat, his instincts warring with his sense of duty. Then he nodded. Don't get yourself killed, Trask. The group retreated under heavy fire, dragging wounded soldiers with them. The dropship loomed closer, its cannons swiveling to target the rebels below. Back at the temporary base camp, tensions flared. The group's medics worked quickly to stabilize the injured, but the atmosphere was thick with unease. You left him there, Lila said, her voice cutting through the din like a blade. Her usually calm demeanor was cracked, raw with emotion. Trask saved us, and you left him to die. Drake turned on her, his expression hard. We couldn't win that fight. If we'd stayed, we'd all be dead. And what's the point of surviving if we abandon our allies? She snapped. He trusted you. He made his choice, Drake said, his voice low but firm. And so did I. For a moment neither spoke. The storm outside the canyon walls echoed their silence, a relentless reminder of the unforgiving world they were trapped on. Before the argument could escalate further, a figure stumbled into the camp, leaning heavily on a makeshift staff. It was Trask, battered but alive. His scaled armor was scorched, and one arm hung limp at his side, but his eyes burned with defiance. You fight like hatchlings, he rasped, collapsing onto a crate. But you are not without honor. Lila rushed to his side, scanning his wounds with a portable med scanner. You shouldn't have survived that. I am harder to kill than most, Trask said with a weak chuckle. He looked at Drake, his expression unreadable. Your plan worked, Commander. But next time, do not assume I need saving. Drake allowed himself a faint smile. Noted. As Trask rested, Lila approached Drake, her earlier anger tempered by exhaustion. We can't keep fighting like this. We're barely holding it together, and the Empire isn't going to let us leave this planet without a fight. I know, Drake said, his tone grim. But we have what we came for. The minerals secure. Now we just need to get it back to the ship. And then what? Lila pressed. The Omega Core? You think one weapon can win this war? Drake looked out at the storm, his expression distant. It's not just a weapon. It's a message. The Empire thinks we're weak, expendable. We're going to prove them wrong. The storm roared with a ferocity that seemed to mirror the chaos unfolding below. The Orion's shield waited at the edge of the canyon, its engines idling as the team fought to secure the precious mineral. A growing hum in the distance signaled the arrival of Empire reinforcements. Commander Ethan Drake tightened his grip on his rifle, his voice sharp over the comms. Lila, status on the extraction? Dr. Lila Arkin crouched beside the mineral container, sweat streaming down her face as she keyed in the final sequences on the portable reactor. Almost done. Just hold them off a little longer. That's the problem, Drake muttered. He gestured toward Kira Hart and the other soldiers. Form a perimeter. We can't let them get close. Trask, still battered from the earlier battle, limped to Drake's side, his plasma rifle glowing faintly. The Empire won't stop until one of us is dead, he growled. Let's make sure it's not us. Drake shot him a wry grin. That's the plan. A deafening explosion shattered the relative calm as the Empire's dropship descended, its cannons carving fiery trails through the canyon walls. Dust and debris filled the air, obscuring the advancing soldiers clad in black armor that gleamed under the lightning-streaked sky. Enemy contact, 6 o'clock! Kira called out, unleashing a volley of shots that lit up the storm-drenched terrain. Drake's heart pounded as he took cover behind a rock, returning fire with precise bursts. Lila, we're out of time. Can we move the container? Not yet, she yelled, her voice strained. The stabilization sequence isn't complete. If we move it now, it'll destabilize and take half the canyon with it. Then we die protecting it, Trask said grimly, his weapon spitting plasma at an advancing squad. There are worse fates. Drake exchanged a glance with the rebel leader. Let's make sure it doesn't come to that. The Empire's forces pressed forward, their superior firepower overwhelming the defenders. One by one, Drake's soldiers fell, their cries lost in the maelstrom. Desperation clawed at him, but he shoved it down. There was no room for fear. Drake, we've got a problem! Kira's voice cracked with panic. They're bringing in heavy artillery. He turned to see a massive siege mech lumbering into the fray, its glowing cannons charging with ominous intent. The ground trembled beneath its weight, each step sending shockwaves through the canyon. We can't fight that, Kira shouted. What do we do? Drake's mind raced. The mech was too large to maneuver in the tight confines of the canyon, but its firepower could wipe them out from a distance. He made his decision. Trask, you're with me, he said, rising to his feet. We're taking that thing down. The rebel leader gave him a sharp nod. I'll follow your lead, human. Try not to get us killed. As the rest of the team held the line, Drake and Trask flanked the mech, slipping through the chaos unnoticed. The towering machine loomed above them, its cannons trained on their position. Now! Drake shouted. He and Trask fired their weapons at the mech's joints, sparks flying as the armor began to buckle. The machine staggered, its movements jerky and uncoordinated. But it wasn't enough. It's still standing, Trask growled. Drake spotted a weak point near the mech's power core. There! Hit it with everything you've got! Trask unleashed a barrage of plasma fire, the concentrated energy punching through the mech's defenses. With a deafening roar, the machine collapsed, its massive frame crumpling into a heap of twisted metal. The victory was short-lived. The Empire's dropship hovered overhead, its cannons glowing as it prepared to unleash a final, devastating strike. Lila's voice cut through the comms, urgent and breathless. The stabilization's complete. We can move the container. Finally, Drake muttered. He sprinted back to the team, adrenaline fueling his every step. Kira, get the container aboard the Orion's shield. We're leaving. What about the dropship? She asked, panic evident in her voice. Drake turned to Lila, who was securing the mineral container. Do we have enough to power the Omega Core? Her eyes widened in understanding. You're not serious. Do we have enough? He pressed. She hesitated, then nodded. Barely. But once we activate it, there's no turning back. Drake glanced at Trask, who nodded in grim approval. Do it, the rebel said. End this. Lila keyed in the activation sequence, the Omega core humming to life with an eerie, pulsing glow. Once it fires, everything within 10 kilometers will be destroyed, she warned. That includes us if we don't get clear. Then we'd better move fast, Drake said. Kira, get everyone aboard. The team scrambled onto the Orion's shield, the engines roaring to life as the storm intensified. The dropship's cannons fired, their blasts narrowly missing the fleeing vessel. Inside the cockpit, Drake barked orders. Lila, how long until the core detonates? 30 seconds, she replied, her hands trembling as she secured the device. The ship rocketed skyward, the crew clinging to whatever they could as turbulence shook the vessel. Below them, the Omega core reached critical mass. A blinding flash consumed the mining site, the Empire's forces, and everything else in the vicinity. The shockwave caught the Orion's shield, throwing it into a violent spin. Alarms blared as the ship struggled to regain control. Stabilizers are failing, Kira shouted, her knuckles white as she gripped the controls. Hold it together, Drake yelled. We're not dying here. With a final burst of effort, the ship leveled out, the crew collapsing into their seats with a mix of relief and exhaustion. Outside, the storm had cleared, leaving only silence and the faint glow of the Omega core's aftermath. As the Orion's shield entered Earth's orbit, the crew gathered on the observation deck. The planet below seemed impossibly serene, its blue and green hues unmarred by the destruction they had left behind. We did it, Lila said softly, her voice heavy with exhaustion. Trask stood beside her, his expression contemplative. You've proven your strength, humans. But the Empire will not forget this. Drake placed a hand on the viewport, his gaze fixed on Earth. Let them come. We'll be ready.